Hello, everyone, and welcome to No Buts About It. And if you have been on the internet, there's been like one thing in the NFL news all this week, and that is Aaron Rodgers claiming he will play again with Davante Adams. We're going to talk about that next on No Buts About It. If you're new to the show, I am Josh Butts, and to the left or right of me, depending which way this ends up downloading, is Stan, the Jet fan, here to enlighten us about what's going on in the NFL. So, first of all, Stan, let's get your initial thoughts before we watch the video. What are you thinking going into this?
I mean, it's something I've been thinking about for a year and a half now, right? I mean, since Aaron Rodgers first came to the Jets, that's been a big discussion. Now, at that point in time, the Raiders were a team that was looking at contending for a Super Bowl, and Adams was supposed to be a big part of that. And we've seen the Raiders organization kind of wither away through this last season, and we've seen them have some really tough times. Now they do have a new coach, Antonio Pierce, who shows a lot of really big positives for them. But it's very likely that Devonte Adams may want to leave again. I mean, we've all seen the videos on Twitter and social media of him screaming at the quarterbacks the last year and a half, of him getting very frustrated with them missing every single pass going his way. We've seen Jimmy G throw 20 yards beyond him sometimes on very simple passes. So Davante Adams is most likely still frustrated, and you haven't really seen any big decisions made by the Raiders to remedy this, right? They brought in Gardner Minshew, but they still have AOC as the other guy there. How is this going to turn out, right? You have two quarterbacks who aren't really seen as starters, and you have one of the best wide receivers of this generation, the best probably of this generation.
So, yeah, I agree, and we're going to talk about all that in more detail, but let's watch this video real quick. Before there was a ton of people talking about the hypothetical of Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams getting back together. Then this video came out from Vegas Sports Today.
What's up? You think Luke Getsy's going to utilize Davante Adams good in the new Raiders offense?
I love Luke Getsy. He's a fantastic coach.
Awesome.
And I love Davante. I can't wait to play with him again.
Great. Love to hear it.
Now, I don't know if you caught this. Did you see this little smile here at the end here? Now, the reason I point out this little like grin that he's got is because if there's one thing we know about Aaron Rodgers is he knows how to work the media. He knows how to get his name into the news. And despite what he says, I think he loves having his name in the news. So, Stan, after watching that video, what do you kind of think? Do you think this is Aaron Rodgers just kind of trying to get his name out there again? You know, it's the off season, start the rumor mill, or do you think there's some legitimacy to this?
Well, I think there's a bit of technique with starting the rumor mill. I mean, think about all the rumors we've seen happen that when the rumors first came out didn't seem very realistic. I mean, when I heard Aaron Rodgers was coming to the Jets, I didn't really buy it at first, right? It took months and months of that rumor floating around before I believed it, right? So I think what Aaron Rodgers is probably doing here is he's trying to get get the media, who's talking about nothing now, right? We're in the middle of the dead season. They're trying to get them to discuss this Davante Adams trade. And maybe now, more people on the Jets and the Raiders side are going to think, okay, what do we want from this trade? Is this something that can happen? Is it something that should happen? And I think most importantly for Davante Adams, I think it is pretty obvious that he would want to play with Aaron Rodgers. But for him, the question he has to ask is, does he want to play in New York with Aaron Rodgers, right? In New York City with that market, right? Las Vegas is a much bigger place to play at than Green Bay. And we've seen him be the star of Las Vegas for years now. There's the fact that maybe his division is shared with the greatest quarterback of all time, right? Or, sorry, second greatest probably of all time. Does that change how he thinks of the Raiders? Does that change how he thinks of, can he make a playoff run with them? I think a big question for him is going to be, does he want to play for New York or the Raiders more?
Yeah, and actually let's talk about what the Raiders have been, what we've seen. So this rumor started around the perfect time. Receiver just came out on Netflix, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier. Davante Adams has not been happy with the Raiders quarterbacks. and that was seen in receiver. In receiver, it was shown that Davante Adams was upset, but that he signed off on Jimmy Garoppolo getting benched. And he also wasn't too happy with his replacement, Aiden O'Connell. Now, I think everyone knows that these guys aren't the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL. However, Warren Sharp posted on Twitter a few days ago a crazy stat. This was insane when I saw it. Davante Adams was targeted 26 times on deep balls of 20-plus yards last season. He had 0 drops on those 26 targets. However, he only caught 4 of them. This sounds like some sort of riddle, right? No, it's because 60% of those targets were inaccurate. They were nowhere near him. So he is obviously got a right to be upset. He's getting older. He's in his 30s. He's getting to that point where he's thinking legacy run. He's thinking Hall of Fame. He has that potential, but maybe he's not quite there yet. And to have guys like Jimmy Garoppolo and Aiden O'Connell throwing to you, when the reason he went to Vegas in the first place was to play with Derek Carr. He wanted to play with his college teammate, Derek Carr, who is no longer there. And people will argue, they'll say, well, Derek Carr isn't any better than Jimmy Garoppolo. But ultimately, the reason he wanted to go to Vegas was to play with his boy, Derek Carr. That's what he said. He also, something to think about with these contracts is taxes. Nevada doesn't have an income tax. Now, New York does, or New Jersey, they do. And Davante Adams is getting paid a lot of money. So do you think any of those things come into maybe him saying, hey, I came to Vegas to play with Derek. Derek isn't here anymore. I'm going to go back with my old buddy up in New York, even though the income tax is high.
Well, I mean, the income tax very obviously has an effect on these players. We saw with Tyreek Hill, he said the main reason why he chose Miami was because there was no income tax, right? So we've seen that with players before, and we'll definitely see it again. But looking at Devonte Adams, it's for wide receivers and really any position on offense that outside of the line and quarterbacks, there's a very steep drop-off. Now, Devonte Adams is very good, so that drop-off may not look as bad, but he knows, as well as everyone knows, he's going to get old eventually. Now, he probably has a few more seasons left, but in the time that he is a wide receiver 1 candidate in the NFL, does he want to make a serious Super Bowl run? I don't think he's making that with the Raiders. I mean, I think that's very clear, unless they get someone, unless the AOC comes out and looks 10 times better than he did last season, because he was very rough last season. So I think that's what I would think about when I'm looking at Davante Adams. The other thing is there's not really any other teams that have been rumored to him that much over the last year and a half. I think when the original conversation with the Jets came up, I remember seeing quite a few teams rumored. But in this last week or however much it's been since that golf video was taken, we haven't really seen a whole lot of rumors there. So the lack of rumors makes it seem as if maybe there are not any real connections to other teams out there. And if that is true, I think Davante Adams, if there's no other options, the Jets would seem like a better option than the Raiders. I think a bigger question, though, is what do the Jets really get out of this in terms of the contract situation? They have a few albatross contracts right now. We have a lot of dead money from Laken Tomlinson, Uzoma, and other players who didn't work out. And even some from Zach Wilson that we have to eat up, and some from JFM that we have to eat up. So we have all these players who aren't even on our team who are taking up millions and millions of cap space. Would bringing in someone like Davante Adams, who has that much of a cap hit, be a smart decision?
Yeah, so that's another big question. Plus, you're likely going to have to trade for him, so you have to give that up too. It looks like his cap hit this year, according to Spot Track, is $25 million, and then he does have a potential out in 2025 in his contract. But in 2025 and 2026, his cap hits are $44 million each. And of course, you can work that around. But I mean, the other thing is you have Garrett Wilson with the Jets, right? You know what you have with Garrett Wilson. You also could have Davante Adams. That would relegate Garrett Wilson down to wide receiver 2. He seems open to that in the interviews he's given, where he talks about that. Sounds like he would love to line up opposite Davante Adams, and I don't know why you wouldn't, because that just makes the defense cover you completely different. They can't double team you as much. It opens up the offense a lot more for Garrett Wilson, for Aaron Rodgers. The Jets would be a better team with Davante Adams on it. That being said, like you've mentioned already, Jets have a ton of dead cap. Plus, you have to trade for him. What are you willing to trade to potentially take on 3 years, $28 million average salary with a ton of guarantees on it?
More than that, I'd probably want to answer the question, what do I not want to trade? And that's mainly a first-round pick. I don't want to give up any first-round picks for Devonte. Last season, I was more than happy to give up a first round. But at this point in time, just looking at the needs we have in our roster for future years, I don't know how smart it would be to give up a first-round pick. Now, if they just want to bundle, seconds and thirds together and put something out there that the Raiders would want to bite on, maybe that would work out. But it's Devonte is a really hard player to tell in terms of value because we haven't really seen. I mean, you rarely see players of that level get traded. For wide receivers, they're one of those positions where usually around week 6, week 7, right before that week 8 deadline of the season every year, there's a few good quality wide receivers going around the league, but you never see someone on that Davante Adams level. And I think Devonte Adams and Ayuk are two guys people are looking at that might maybe get traded. Who knows? Maybe not in this time of the season. But it's extremely rare, so that makes it a lot harder to know the value. Now, the other question is, how do the Raiders see Devonte Adams? If they want to focus more on their younger players, right? Focus more on they know they're not making the playoffs, or they at least are probably pretty certain they're not going to make the playoffs. So do you focus on giving minutes to your younger guys, or do you try to get a better standing in your division, which is one of the toughest, probably the toughest, because of the big Patrick Mahomes there, the greatest quarterback in the NFL currently? Do they try to just focus on their youth?
You just love rubbing in that Patrick Mahomes, greatest quarterback in the league comment, don't you?
Yeah, I dealt with Tom Brady destroying my team for my entire childhood.
So, I mean, you mentioned you don't want to give up a first-round pick, but the fact is that is what the Packers initially gave up. They gave up a 2022 first-round pick that turned into Quay Walker and a 2022 second-round pick that I can't quite find who that turned into right now. But, I mean, I'm guessing Vegas is going to want those picks back, or that type of I guess, value back, at least. Like you mentioned, like you can combine picks and stuff, but then you get to the point where you're trading like your entire draft away except for your first round pick. And I don't think you want to do that either. So I guess final decision. We're running out of time here. Do you want this trade to happen? Do you think it's reasonable? I mean, obviously you want it to happen. Like, if they come out and they're like, hey, for a 4th-round pick, you can have Davante Adams, I think you'd be all over that. But in the world of reality that we live in, as a Jets fan, as Stan, the Jet fan, do you want this trade to happen?
Well, one last point to kind of couple with that answer is I think the Jets have probably had the worst luck of any team in the league with bringing in guys onto offense who are later on in their career. I mean, Uzama, basically any O-lineman we brought in the last few years. Dalvin Cook, right? We've brought in a lot of older guys who just have not turned out too well. And I think because of that, looking at the amount of value that Joe Douglas has in picks and in young players, I think he's probably going to stick with them or get a mid-tier wide receiver at around that week 4 to week 8 deadline of the league. So I don't think Davante Adams is the decision because the Raiders, I think other teams would give them more for Davante Adams. And I think ultimately it's not going to work out.
Okay, well, there you go, Jets fans. Stan the Jet fan has said not going to work out. Davante Adams will not be a New York Jet.
Actually, I want to give one little side note here.
He's changing his mind.
I think if the Jets win, like, let's say 6 of the first 7 games, so all but one, maybe we don't beat the 49ers, but we beat everyone else, I think then the Jets might just consider giving up a first, right? Because if you're looking at a Super Bowl run, you would give up the first. So that is the only thing I'll add on.
So you're okay with it? I mean, this would probably realistically happen at the trade deadline because he's going to be like, how does Gardner Minshew actually turn out? So you'd be okay with a trade deadline, like, hey, we could win the division, we could go on a Super Bowl run type thing, and
Yeah.
then you're good for a first round pick. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to give so much value at this point of the season.
That makes sense. Okay, I'm down with that. There you have it. Stan the Jet fan. Before we go, and bye, Aaron. Before we go, I wanted to ask everyone to subscribe because 99% of our viewers are not subscribed. However, a bunch of you are returning. We have over 800 average returning viewers, and I love every single one of you, but it really helps us out if those viewers subscribe. So, it also helps us out if you like and comment as well. I appreciate everyone for listening. For Stan the Jet fan, I'm Josh Butts, and until next time, go do something nice for someone.